All right. Hey there, everyone. I'm Leon, and I'm excited that Rob is with us today to talk about strategically adopting AI across your company. Thanks for joining and talking, Rob.
Oh, my pleasure to be here, Leon. So excited. We've just recently gotten to know each other. Recently, in AI terms, 2.5, 3 months is like a lifetime. So it's so glad to be here. I feel like you're my best friend. You are my best friend. You're my only friend. I'm sorry.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's just dive right in. Tell me a little bit about strategically implementing AI. I know that's a really broad launching point, but yeah, tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about it.
Sure, sure. I've been trying to distill sort of the answer to that question. And, I've been working, as you know, in Silicon Valley for over 25 years. Um, as a program manager, agile coach, and now strategic consultant. And what I would say, like bringing everything together I've learned is transforming an organization is hard, and we've talked a lot about in the last 25 years of transforming organizations. What I would say then, implementing AI is even harder, right? And then
Sure.
doing both at the same time is really, I think, the maturity curve that it takes for an organization to implement AI well requires you not only to be a mature technical organization, but to
Hmm.
be a truly collaborative organization, because this is implementing AI successfully is not just implementing technology, it's collaboration, right, with your business and partnering with them together and
Hmm.
walking hand in hand. And to do it successfully requires every sort of, vertical, every different part of the organization truly working together and collaborating. And
Hmm.
to be honest, a lot of companies struggle with that. So that at the very foundation, we're really talking about culture to implement AI. And not a lot of people, like, people always want to just jump in on technology, right? And I'm trying to beat the drum a little bit more on culture. And one other thing would be, and people hate this word, but dare I say, governance. Governance and process is extremely important if you're going to scale.
Tell
I'll
me, tell me
stop
a little
there.
bit more, about what you think it takes, or what kind of culture is is ready to adopt AI today. Because I agree with you. I think one of the incredible benefits of AI today is we're all building on top of these model providers. And they are heavily incentivized, as we see, to ship newer, better models, not even every year, but potentially multiple times a year. And so the tech is
Yeah.
getting better without us even doing anything. But tell me
Yeah.
more about being ready to receive that technology and leverage it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, one of the things I've, been sharing in my newsletter a lot is really about sort of the technology is moving so fast. We as humans cannot keep up with it. It's moving like literally, day by day, week by week. I think Gartner did a really great sort of AI maturity model. And I'll kind
Hmm.
of talk at a high level where they have, level one is awareness, level two is like active, level three operational, level four systemic, and level five transformational. So let me walk you through that. So,
Yeah,
like, the
tell me.
first step to do that is, a company shows like early AI interest, right?
Hmm.
And what I'm talking more about is like prototyping, right? Like there are, so what I would say, your champions, your early adopters saying, hey, there's something special going on here, and we should spend some cycles kind of looking at this because I think there's something here.
Hmm.
And that's the awareness, right? It's introduced into the organization. The organization doesn't really know yet sort of how what it really takes to be successful, but they're attracted by all these wonderful stories about how AI will transform your culture, with a push of a button. And
Mhm.
and then that next one is they actively start experimenting, right? And that's normally, you know, data in a data science context, using data, you know, people kind of pulling favors and saying, "Hey, we'd like to do this. Let's try it." They cobble something together, and it looks and it shows value and it shows promise. That next level is really operational, where you're able to take sort of this prototype and you're able to put it into production, and you're able to create value. And I think that's the first thing. I think a lot of organizations are like, "Hey, let's do AI." They jump
Mhm.
in, and I've seen this, and you'd think I'd be making it up. One of the corporations I worked at, was they were jumping into AI, but they weren't defining the problem, right?
Mhm.
That they were really trying to solve, or they didn't truly have internal sponsorship to be successful. So
Mhm.
even though the data scientists had solved a very interesting problem with like trade confirmations, there was when they showed it to the customer, they were like, "Yeah, that's great. I got five other things that I'd rather be doing right now, and I don't have, the budget to support this." Because then it came like, well, who's going to support this in production? How are we going to productionalize the updating of data? How are we going to ensure that there's no drift in the model? All those things were
Mhm.
like, oh, well, you're going to have to pay people and provide that. Like the
Yeah.
data scientists were like, that's not our job anymore. We have built the model. So I think that third, like getting to the operational point where you have, as an organization, define what your roles and responsibilities are, who does what the budget is to support even one model, and then growing and scaling. So now you're talking about getting to, you know, a systemic way of introducing a digital process and a chain for transformation, right? And now
Yeah.
you got your flywheel is what I call,
Mhm.
and everyone knows their role. The business people are working with your technology people. The technology people are working with your marketing and your sales. And either you're building, and this is a whole other conversation one day, that we were just recently talking about, is what type of product are you building? Like,
Mhm.
is it a product from scratch? Are you adding AI to an already existing product? Is it a back end AI? And we'll talk a little bit more like Uber and all the work that Uber does, with like machine learning behind the scenes to predict like a
Mhm.
car so that it picks you up, or that a food delivery gets to you as fast as possible. And then
Well, yeah. I mean,
what?
let's talk use
Yeah,
cases.
go ahead.
Tell me,
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
me some use cases that you're seeing today, because you just mentioned Uber, and I mean, I don't think people that use Uber think of it as an AI product, but I think that there's this kind of misconception or duality in society where simultaneously AI is has been here and is not here and it can't do anything, because the thing that I point to is Siri and Alexa, are they the best voice assistants we've ever
Mhm.
created? No, but they're 5 or 10 years old now,
Yeah.
rolled out to hundreds of millions of users, and people use them on a daily basis. And those are very simple AI implementations. So tell us about more use cases.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was recently at a conference, and Uber did a presentation of Michelangelo. It's like their own proprietary sort of,
Mm.
we'll call it LLM op kind of tool that they've been building since I think like 2017. And I think when people talk AI today, they're talking about ChatGPT, right? And generative AI. AI encompasses a lot of different areas. And I think one of the companies that has done that, the best, or an example is Uber, right? So when you look at what Uber does on the back end to predict, how long, one, what car should pick you up, how long is it going to take that car to pick you up, modeling the prices depending on the demand in that very moment. All of that takes place in seconds, right? And you know 10 years ago that would be impossible to do, or 15
Mhm.
years ago. So that's a
Well, I think
great
that's a great
example.
point because to me, what I talk to people about is AI can compress massive amounts of data into insights or into actionable information. And that I think is a perfect example,
Quickly.
even though the information is not what a human has to make a decision in a traditional sense. It is because the human drivers are deciding, am I accepting this ride or not? And
Yep.
that's based on the AI compressing all the demand, running all the algorithms. So I think that's a great example. I'd love to
And I
just
got
hear
another
more.
example
Oh yeah,
that
give me
I
another.
think is mind blowing. It's always blown my mind, but it's anytime you swipe or use your credit card,
Hmm.
like what I've had the good fortune to work at PayPal, to work at JP Morgan Chase, at a company called WePay that they acquired. When you swipe your credit card, in those split seconds, the
Hmm.
amount of data that is and analysis, is this fraud? Are you swiping it within a couple of miles of your house? Are you in a different country? And making that decision on whether to approve or decline a specific transaction, all of that is now done through AI. Also, the onboarding of merchants and determining whether a merchant is a fraudster or is a truly valid. I've seen that as an example go where, if you look how that used to be done when you would sign up for a bank account, it would
Hmm.
take weeks, old school, with paper, and you would have to physically go in to the bank and talk to your specific representative to now, if you're not doing that in real time, you're at a competitive disadvantage.
Yeah.
And all that, it is sort of what I would say, you are trying to mine the gold of AI. And those are two great examples of companies saving, one, a company not being able to exist without it, to two, a company saving, literally millions and millions of dollars by
Hmm.
using AI effectively.
I think that's a great example. And I think people are talking about AI. Is it hype? Is it not? But we've just given two examples that, are unlocking business models and, working on the order of billions of dollars of, volume throughput through these
Yep.
platforms enabled instantaneously by AI. So I want to transition that into, like you said, you've been working in tech for quite some time. But tell me some stories of other technologies that have felt like or have resulted in transformational change and what it's like kind of riding that wave because I think we all feel it and we're aware that we're somewhere on the wave. We're not quite sure, but tell us more about riding the new technologies.
I'm glad you asked that question. It's interesting, and this is, as you were asking that question, I just thought about another sort of something I've been saying and talking about. And I remember when I worked at Adobe, they had this like demo day, and this guy
Hmm.
pulled me over and he said, "Hey Rob, let me show you this thing. It's called CICD, right? It's
Hmm.
called continuous integration and continuous deployment." And he walked me through it, and I was like, "Oh my god." You mean you're able to deploy servers automatically, and you're able to deploy code on the fly on a daily basis, where if you remember, I I remember when, if you did an upgrade, they would send you like 40 floppy disks and you would literally like have to upgrade, So that would only happen, it was a shrink wrapped update. So it had to be shipped to you. So now, you're doing that continuously. You're doing that and can do that on a daily basis. Why do I say
Mhm.
that? It's because I feel that's where we're at now with like AI. With AI, and when I talk about like LLM ops, and I've been writing a lot about that, is
Mhm.
we need to be able to automate sort of the passing of the baton. It's the Olympics right now this week,
Mhm.
and to do that successfully, to do that in an automated fashion so that you can scale. And when that CICD first came out, it was, it was bleeding edge, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
cutting edge, it was bleeding edge. And now when you look at it, if you're not doing CICD, you're out of business, right? Like no
Yeah.
company is manually pushing code anymore. And I
Yeah.
think, over the next couple of years, it's going to be exactly the same for AI. AI will be automatically sort of, go from step A to step B. You'll still need human intervention, right? It will not replace sort of engineers. And what I could say is when you look at the complexity of all the different applications that you have to stitch together to
Mhm.
successfully, implement AI, if you try to do that manually, like you could do that for one model, you could do that for two models, but when a company has 10, 15, 20, 100 or more models, there's no way you're going to be able to do that
Yeah.
manually anymore.
Well, I think, I saw something the other day that was like, I think it was a bit over 60 years between, first flight and man on the moon. And I think, if we look at, let's say, even where AI was 5 years ago, which is dramatically different from today, a lot of the stuff that we talk about can feel fanciful or far off. But if you ask yourself, I mean, this stuff is going to continue to develop for 60 more years. And I just, the possibilities are really incredible. And like you said, it's going to be automatically merged into our life. And so part of that is, to me, what I see is you want to be early on that because that's where the gains are. If you're playing
Yeah,
catch up, you're not getting gains. You're treading water. But there are gains to be made if you're doing stuff now, right?
yeah. And the catch up is, yeah, it takes time to build these muscles. And
Mm-hmm.
building these muscles, when I say takes time, even in a progressive organization, you're talking a couple of years. Now, what I would say is the hype is there's a lot of clickbait in AI. I went
Sure.
through, this has happened, 2017, right? AI was going to change the world, and this has happened every time there's a major advance in AI, going back to like the 90s. There
Mm-hmm.
is this, AI will replace us. And I think, somewhere on that continuum of AI replacing us to, slow but steady progress is where AI is going to land. It's,
Mm-hmm.
will some jobs be changed significantly? Absolutely. Will some jobs go away? Absolutely. Will, in my opinion, many new jobs be created? And one of the stories I like to say is like, history does repeat itself. So, with every major industrial revolution, and you could look at this as a revolution, not an evolution,
Mm-hmm.
there are significant amounts of people who are impacted, but then new jobs get impacted. So, the quick example of that is, in the early 20th century, when they started to mechanize, the agricultural industry, many jobs were disrupted because before that, basically, you know, I think, and don't quote me on this, but there was like 70% of the people in the US worked in farming, in
Mm-hmm.
ag. Uh, what were you going to do with all those people? And that was part of that evolution into creating schools and high schools, and
Yeah.
where, people were no longer on the farms, they had to be educated. And it's the same thing, now. What I would say is we are now knowledge workers, are who have to learn at a ferocious rate. Like, no matter,
Hmm.
these last 30 years of me in tech, have been, it's like every year, the factor of having to learn more and more and faster and faster. So we as knowledge workers, our responsibility is really to continually learn, grow, and evolve.
I
And,
think that's
AI can help us.
that's spot on because yeah, AI is your kind of knowledge worker buddy, if you
Yeah,
will. It's a lever.
your assistant.
Um, it's an exceptional assistant, and what I talk about often is AI has to be not the source or seed of your creativity, but your amplifier of your own creativity. If you don't
Absolutely.
have creativity and insight to promote, then yeah, the outputs you get from AI are not particularly effective or interesting. Uh, and I think that's critical when you know the the next thing I want to talk about is why AI projects fail. And to me, that is one of the most serious reasons that AI projects fail is people think AI is autopilot from no insight, no originality. It just I set it and forget it. And
Right.
that's not AI today, and it will, in my opinion, never be AI because how could it know exactly what you're saying if you don't use your words? It can
Yeah.
extrapolate in ways. But tell me more about why AI projects fail, and how companies should think about that today,
Yeah.
prevent
No,
projects from failing.
absolutely. Yeah, I'll just quickly say it could be as simple as a lot of companies don't understand the problem they're trying to solve,
Yep.
the job to be done, and how they're going to use that.
Mm-hmm.
We were recently on a call with a company that I think does a really great job called Stability, an OKR software.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at it as, what's the job to be done, right? How do I help my user versus just, insert, a prompt for them to use? How do I
Mm-hmm.
provide value? And I think that's, number one, what problem are you trying to solve? Number two is lack of sufficient data. Understand, do you have the data to actually build the solution? Or sometimes if you go up your funnel, right, are you capturing it? Because if you're not capturing that data up front, sometimes it could take 6 months or a year, depending on the
Mm-hmm.
volume that you have, to create that data to really build something that will, significantly, provide an ROI. Uh, Lack of planning, and, how are you going to support that model? Where's the new data going to come from? How are you going to ensure that it stays current and accurate? Who's gonna make sure it stays current and accurate? um Underestimating sort of the time and the cost that it
Mm-hmm.
truly takes. And I think that this goes back exactly to what we were talking about, is that you are making a significant upfront in sort of investment when you're talking at the product side, right? You're making a big investment up front for that ROI on the back end, but that ROI can take some time. Now, I think it all depends on what you're trying to solve. If you're trying to sort of empower your employees to be more effective by leveraging AI in their day to
Mm-hmm.
day, that's a different problem than, I want to create a product and I want to sell that product. And,
Mm-hmm.
those are two different things. I do think that the earlier one of empowering your employees is a little easier,
Mm-hmm.
right? creating a brand new product built on AI, that requires a whole sort of infrastructure to be put in place so that one, you can grow it over time. And, you could scale and support that over time. And then vendor misalignment, there are, when you look at all the different players in the space, and I recently shared a diagram. I think the name of that was like First Data.
Mm.
And you look at all the players, there's like 1,000 different like vendors
Yeah.
in this space. And, you know, I think there's always the balance of one vendor that does it all
Hmm.
versus niche vendors that really do some, a very niche thing well. And then you talk about open source, and you throw that in the mix. And I think you really have to be very thoughtful on how you implement AI strategically, from the data
Hmm.
to the software to training internally. And then we're not even talking about culture, because how does your culture work differently? Because I think there is, the last thing what I'll say is there's a
Hmm.
difference between application development and AI development and their
Hmm.
life cycles, and sort of, doing both at the same time. Because when you're doing software, you have a definitive result. And when you're doing AI, the result can be different each and every time. And how do you
Yep.
deal with that? And when is it good enough? You kind of mix all these things together, and you really have to have a well orchestrated, not only culture but governance of ensuring that you're on the right track, right? And then if you're in a highly regulated industry, how do you ensure that you're keeping up with government regulations? And
Hmm.
what I would say is, you could build, if you build it up front, that will organically grow, so that like you're knocking off two, three birds with one stone, that you can
Hmm.
keep track of your models, that your models are actually sort of, staying current, that you're meeting legal and,
Hmm.
governance regulations all at the same time. And that will help you provide a better solution to your customers if you do it up front. Trying to, once the genie's out of the bottle,
Yeah.
it'll be a lot more expensive to do,
No, I think
or you
that's
won't be
critical.
successful.
Yeah, and there's a company that I've been talking to and used their product called Kendo AI, and they're really good about taking data security and being able to basically give your entire company access to all the popular LLMs, but doing it in a data secure way, and they have a ton of options. So they're definitely a great one to look at. But as we
Right.
wrap, I want to you know, give us just two or three things that you think companies should be doing today, first steps with AI that you think they should be doing today.
Whew, that's first steps. Yeah, I guess my question might be, where are they? I think I hate to answer the question. It depends. It depends on where you're at with your journey, right?
Sure.
But I would say, you know, first steps was, what's old is new again, right?
Hmm.
So if your first step is being very, very clear on what your strategy is, right? And what are your goals? And
Hmm.
what do you want to accomplish in the next year, in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years? Because building that infrastructure and everything we just talked about, you know, you're not going to do that in 6 months. It takes time. You're going to be building muscle. So what is your strategic plan, and what are the outcomes that you're trying to create? And then go backwards and say, how can AI help us with this? Right. So, it depends on what industry are you in. If you're in banking, you may want to go after more, well, we want to decrease fraud, right? And that's very important. And how are we going to do that? If you're in customer service, well, we want to, automate the quality of responses to our customers,
Mhm.
and decrease the amount of customer support agents that we need. Uh, all that. So it's really important to understand what you're trying to resolve. And then
Mhm.
from that, say, okay, how can we build the infrastructure to accomplish that? And I would say the last thing would be, what's the low hanging fruit? And I'll tell you a
Sure.
very quick story. It's interesting, and it was a great lesson for me. I think when you go and you ask a data science team how to solve a problem, guess what? They're going to try to solve that with data science.
Mhm.
The thing is you don't necessarily always need to use data science.
Yeah.
Sometimes the first low hanging fruit can be a simple, you know, sophisticated, Excel spreadsheet, that you could basically create in a couple of days. So think about what's the fastest way you can provide value. And then think about, all right, how do we do this even better with AI, right?
Mhm.
And that's the danger, I think, is no, and what I would say is educating your organization on what is AI, how
Mhm.
does it work, how can you take advantage of it, and that will and how do we collaborate, and building an AI first culture are really the steps that you want to do,
Mhm.
versus waiting. What, this is really expensive, I don't see how AI is going to help us. And I think we're definitely on the same page of where it's not if, it's when it will
Mhm.
radically sort of transform, your particular industry. And if you wait for it to be transformed, you will be out of business, because those other companies are going to be 2 to 3 years ahead. And the power
Yeah.
of AI at that point they're going to be doing, and this is a bad recipe. You don't want to be in this position. Companies will be able to do things faster, companies will be able to do things better, and
Mhm.
companies will be able to do things cheaper. That is a recipe that your company, if you can't do that and you can't keep up, and I've seen this happen, you're out of business, you're done, you
No,
know
you're exactly right. The models are getting so much better so quickly and so much cheaper at the same time. And that's
exactly.
not from one company, that's from open source and from closed model companies. So I think that's a great call to action is really start experimenting so you build up as a company an intuition about what AI is and isn't,
Yep.
and then experimenting with bringing it into your company and your workflows. And even if it's a little bit pricey today, which, as we talk about, there's a lot of alternatives if you don't want to
Yep.
use the top models. But I think that is a great way to get companies started. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share all your knowledge and insight with us, Rob, today. Thank you so much.
It's truly a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I look forward, and we do this one on one because we enjoy just talking. But I'm glad that we could share this, and hopefully others will benefit, from sort of the knowledge we have dropped today.
Awesome, Rob. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.